Hi everyone, it's Jen again. Want to apologize for last week's video that it was kind of noisy with stuff going on in the background. Normally I try to record when the rest of the family is asleep, and last week I was just kind of on a tight schedule, being that I was going out of town for a few days. This week I am back home. I had a great trip. I didn't get much work done. I basically went up to a lake in the middle of nowhere and just lazed around. I brought my tablet with me because I thought I would do some artwork, and I just didn't end up doing any of that. I just ended up, just basically chilling and playing with my son and visiting with family and stuff. So that was nice. I feel like in the past I would struggle more with like doing that sort of thing and like not feeling guilty for it. So I'm kind of glad that I was able to give myself permission to do that. I know it sounds like such a basic thing, but for me, it was actually like a pretty good indicator that I'm actually like, I don't know, learning and growing and trying to avoid my mistakes of the past by like not burning myself out. So I'm just gonna be sketching on a picture. I'm working on redesigns for Soul Union. The work that I've been doing on Soul Labyrinth isn't very exciting to video, as it's me just really being quiet and just like sitting there like scripting. So that update should be coming out soon. I just want to do at least one pass. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of grammatical errors and stuff like that, but I want to do at least one pass and make sure that there's no like super glaring obvious mistakes that I would catch like immediately, like left in there before I hit that publish button. So that'll be coming out maybe by the end of this weekend if I can get around to it. We'll see. The weather here has been like absolutely just bonkers. Yesterday it was like raining buckets. I went outside. I didn't have an umbrella, so coming off work, going across the employee parking lot, by the time I got into my car, I don't even know how far it was. I'm kind of bad at like that type of like how many steps and what distance it was, but I was only out there for like, maybe 2-3 minutes, and it was like I jumped into a lake. I was soaked. I was completely soaked. So that was interesting. And yeah, I might not have that many interesting things to talk about right now because I haven't been doing a lot of things creatively. Again, I've just been kind of like taking a big break. I have to admit that like some of my friends have been talking about Spooktober, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted, because I absolutely love like Halloween theme everything. It's my favorite holiday. But I'm gonna be smart and I'm not gonna even entertain the idea of joining this year. Maybe I will save myself for next year's. Hopefully they'll do another Spooktober, and I will save my like once a year game jam or something for that jam. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. I've been very happy with overall how these redesigns are going in comparison to the original designs and art. I think I mentioned before in one of my other videos that when I had started working on assets for Soul Union, especially with like the sprite art, that was one of the first things that I did when I was still just getting back into creating. And I was really kind of experimenting with my style at the time, because I kind of didn't really know what I was doing anymore, because it had been years since I had really tried to create anything, draw anything. So I think part of me was just happy that I didn't feel like I lost my skills. Felt a little bit rusty at first, but major thing that was definitely affected was the confidence in my lines. I think most artists would agree with me on this, that that is probably, if you take a big break from art, kind of the first thing to go is your line confidence. That drawing daily can really kind of help with that. Why is that important in digital art when I can just go back and infinitely erase and tweak my line artwork by like the pixel? There's still a kind of strength and speed that you can kind of feel in your line work, even digitally, that even though I could go in with the Soul Union artwork and I could go in and I could like try to tidy up every line so that you wouldn't see where I had kind of like gone over the same line twice, or like added in kind of like a fake line weight where it wasn't me just like applying more pressure to make that line, but kind of going back and like doing these little doubled up lines, sketching on top of that final line art. It just gives this whole stiffness to it. And there's probably like technical terms for that I don't know what that is right now. And I don't know how much of it is apparent to the untrained eye, but I can see it, I can feel it. Not only does it make the drawing process like way slower when I have to go in there and actually like edit the lines instead of just having a nice, clean, confident weighted line from the start. Not only does it make the process slower, but it also gives like, I don't know, the drawing just feels stiffer. Even when the posing and everything is the same, it just looks stiffer. Maybe it's just me. I do feel like my posing has gotten a little bit more fluid since those earlier drawings as well. Just again, the more you draw, the more you loosen up, the more confidence you have. I think the posing just kind of becomes stronger as well. Because, you're not so much worried anymore about, like, getting things anatomically correct. You look at a lot of things that have really strong posing. I'm going to take JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, for example. And you could look at some of that posing from an anatomical level. And, like, if you were to, I don't know, put a live actor, if you were to try to rotoscope that pose, it would look incredibly stiff, being anatomically correct, like 100% accurate to real life. In animation, exaggeration is important for visual clarity, because the drawing, the pose, is only on the screen for like less than a second a lot of times. So if you want the viewer to be able to see the gesture you're trying to convey, a lot of times you will warp that anatomy and perspective to not be accurate to reality. You will make the characters defy the laws of physics. And I'm not talking just about like the really exaggerated kind of like super cartoony Bugs Bunny cartoons and stuff like that. I love seeing the work that they do on Guilty Gear series when they made that transition, to 3D, because they were able to keep a lot of the integrity of the characters, that just kind of dynamic appeal, by going in and hand editing each frame to deform the characters. And it really is a great example to show how necessary it is to exaggerate beyond what is actually anatomically correct in order to have lively looking characters. And that exaggeration is one of the things that I find like really that I love about animation, especially like the classic hand-drawn kind of stuff. I'm not saying that my artwork is necessarily a spitting example of like, you know, that style. I think I could a lot of times like probably push my work more. But I think that's one of those things that I particularly like in art, and sometimes if I'm being mindful for it, I will actually go back to my sketch and kind of flip it so I can have a fresh eye, and I'll go in with the deform tool and I'll just see how far I can push the pose, how far I can exaggerate like the limbs or the weight going a certain way before it starts to look really jacked up. And a lot of times then I find that I can make the pose look a little bit more dynamic than I thought, without it like breaking my brain and being like, okay, that just looks wrong. I think I've mentioned before that Soul Union, when I started working on the visual novel, was shortly after my son was born, and I started really thinking about this, and I was going through some issues in regards to my adoption. I was really trying to work out some of my own issues because I didn't want to raise my son with like a bunch of unresolved baggage that could possibly hinder our ability to have a meaningful connection. I am not a very affectionate person. Let me walk that back for a second. Showing affection is not something that comes naturally to me. I'm usually pretty guarded, and as far as like how much like physical like touch that I seek out on my own is almost like non-existent. And I don't know precisely why I'm like that. I feel like my relinquishment could have something to do with it, but I knew that wouldn't be healthy for my son to like have a mother who was like not very affectionate, or like would withdraw from physical contact, just from a biological scientific kind of standpoint, how important it is to have physical touch, especially when you're young, in order to feel safe and to like not trigger excessive stress hormones. But at the same time, I also know that children are very perceptive, that it's not good enough just to go through the motions or to give kids like lip service as to like how much they are loved or how much they wanted. That if I felt repelled, that he would be able to pick up on that. So I really had to work on becoming more comfortable with that, and to be able to make him feel like he was truly wanted and loved. Like, that was my number one goal as a parent, was just to make sure that he knew, without me even having to say any words, that he was wanted and loved. Like, if he could feel in his life those things, you know, if he could feel that he was wanted and loved by his mother, I feel like my job as a parent would be done. But that was like my only goal and the only thing that I really wanted for him. Which may sound like I was setting the bar pretty low for myself, but I was really still terrified that I wouldn't be able to, like, even if I felt that way, I wouldn't be able to convey it, and that he wouldn't know that I felt that way. I was really terrified that I wouldn't be able to communicate it. Because, you know, when people would tell me that when I was young, it didn't really matter what they said. I didn't feel it. So it was hard for me to know what that feels like. I have a pretty good imagination. I think that, you know, that's one of the reasons why I love creating characters. That's the thing I love most about, like, just creating these stories in general, is I love exploring these characters. And so I think I'm pretty good at, like, putting myself in the shoes of these characters, like what they would feel. Like, theoretically, even if I never experienced exactly the same thing directly. And it probably has something to do with, like, my personality type. I don't totally subscribe to absolutely everything, you know, that Carl Jung said about, like, the personality types and stuff. But there's definitely some things that I can agree with. Eyebrows. I don't know that I'm going to show those through the feathers, because that doesn't make sense to me. What do you guys think? I know a lot of times I've gone through this, like, back and forth through my different artwork throughout the ages as to whether or not eyes and eyebrows should show through the hair. I know realistically they shouldn't, but in animation, in anime especially, a lot of times they do show through. And part of that is, like, a lazy animator thing, because you can just put the eyes and the eyebrows on a separate layer and animate that and not have to animate, like, the base face. So you don't have to worry about what the hair is doing and everything. But part of that is also, again, for that visual clarity, because you're trying to show an expression and there's so much nuance that you can convey through, like, the eyebrows and the eye. Just like just subtle, tiny little bit of line to how it's curved, or how it's, you know, just the most nuanced placement of those lines for those eyes and eyebrows make a huge difference in expression. And so if you have most of the eye or the eyebrows covered up by the character's hair, you lose a lot of that ability to show those nuanced expression. And you could argue, well, you know, I don't know, somebody who has their hair and their eyes in real life always has that kind of mysterious quality to them, because you can't see their face and their eyes and their expression as clearly. So if you do that in animation, then it should be the same. But again, it's not something. Animation, I think, is always at its best when it's not trying to copy reality, but exaggerate. And you want to make connections to characters, even if they're supposed to be, like, kind of mysterious. You still want to be able to understand their motivations and their feelings. Thanks for hanging out with me and keeping me company. I'm just kind of doodling. Hope you have a great week coming up, and don't forget to enjoy that process. Take care. Bye-bye.